My name is Richard. Richard Rukundo. I work for the Province of Church of Uganda. My biggest role is actually the Assistant Provincial Education Coordinator, but I work also as the Provincial Children's Ministry Coordinator in that capacity as well. So my work involves working with 35 dioceses of the Province of Church of Uganda and ensuring that children in schools and churches and organizations affiliated Church of Uganda are working towards what is favorable for the children and how we do ministry, holistic ministry to the young, especially in our congregations, in our communities as well. If you're in Uganda for a while, you'll not miss seeing a story about a child who's been abused by a family or parents. And as a church, I felt we have a responsibility as well. For the last over 5 years, we've been working on a child protection policy for Church of Uganda because we didn't have one. And since we have a lot of schools and churches and people working with the children, we felt it was necessary to have guidelines into what is being done for the children and safeguarding them. And so the last Provincial Assembly, that is in 2014 August, approved the Church of Uganda Provincial Children's Child Protection Policy, which will be spread out to all the dioceses so that we have guidelines. Part of what it does is to set standards on what we should do as churches, but also as individuals working with children, so that we really are doing things that are acceptable, things that give children dignity, things that encourage children to actually feel like we care for them. We are protecting their rights as well. And they know their responsibilities too.
Can you tell me about what that journey has felt like for you, trying to get that child protection policy in place, and now that it's agreed, trying to get people to use it?
I think my history has been, because of my work with children for the almost now 15 years with Church of Uganda, the Diocese of Kampala, and all over through the province. A lot of things happen in schools that are really needing our attention. For example, most of our schools still have corporal punishment, which is outlawed, but they still cane children. And so schools are not very friendly places for the children. And that for me was a big issue, that we as church are not saying that's not right to harass children or to have children beaten. But the other thing that has come around is our cultural beliefs. For example, I still have marriages happening for children under 18, which is actually not supposed to happen, because the law says so, but still communities will approve some of those things. And you find things like where children are actually taken to witchcraft, or sometimes actually sacrifice, which is child sacrifice still takes stories. So what I've been thinking about is, how do we as church help our communities to appreciate that some of those things are not right? Generally, there's a whole belief that things are not supposed to be like that, but the willingness to do it is being the slow. And so for me as a children's worker, I remember oftentimes being standing for the rights of the children, saying maybe there's a story about a child who has been molested, and I have to stand and say, no, we must take a position, or we must report this to police. Or sometimes the child is having a problem at home and the parents are not doing and we get to know as church. So me working with the children is saying, no, we must be able to stand and say, the family must do something, or the police must intervene, because we have a responsibility. So currently, I think the biggest challenge I find is having everybody come on board to support me, because oftentimes the priests would like to play it safe, because they believe that, no, don't cause a lot of commotion in the community or around the church. I remember a story where I had a boy who was actually trying to abuse a child, and we got to know, and it was happening at church. And when I wanted to take this boy to police, the MU members were saying, Mothers Union members said, oh, that can't happen because this is part of us and you'll be shaming the church. But I said, look, we also are obliged to follow the law and what the law says. And good enough, as a priest, I was able to take the child to the police, and this boy to the police, and the police did all the tests and found that there was nothing, but the file was opened, which for me, I feel that was a way of saying we have to take a position. And I'm glad, because when the mother went to the police and said, no, there's a case that I want to open, they said, no, but this case has been reported already. So I feel that we need to have pastors supportive of this process, parents as well being supportive of this. Most of the volunteers, of course, are afraid of what will it do, because sometimes it puts you in the risk in the limelight. And I feel that we need to empower them. What I've done is share with my story. Oftentimes I get in the community and find this child who is supposed to go to school, but is not going to school because they are being caused to work, and child labor is against the law. So I will say, who is taking care of this child? What is happening? Why is the child not going to school? And they will tell me the problem. I will say, no, this child is supposed to go to school, not work, when others are supposed to be at school. So oftentimes it's standing out. And I've been encouraging my volunteers to say, look, once we are leaders for the children, we are leaders not just on Sunday or at church. We are leaders in the community, we are leaders in the families, we are leaders everywhere. So if you find a child who needs your help, please do not say that's not my responsibility. You have a responsibility, because these are children that we are protecting. And if we call ourselves leaders or children's workers, we must have a responsibility beyond just the church walls.
And that's what I really like when you talk, is that it's really clear that you take a really personal responsibility for protecting children. You don't leave it to someone else or to the police. You regard it as your job and the jobs of leaders in the church to take that action. Have you got any advice that you would give to any of our volunteer parish safeguarding officers if they're facing the same challenges that you have in trying to get people to report issues, to take action, to follow the rules in the child protection policy, but they're struggling to do that? What would you advise them to do?
I guess the advice I would give the Ugandan people is the one I would give them as well. Often as volunteers, we don't have a lot of mandate to do what we are supposed to do right. And I thank God that for us at Church of Uganda now we have a child protection policy which will safeguard us, which will shield us, that we are doing things which are approved, which everyone knows. So having a child protection policy guideline is very important, and I'm glad that you already have something like that. That's a big tool to say we are doing the right thing, and here is what empowers us to do the right thing. But also the other thing is saying, if we volunteer ourselves to do something, let's become the change agents. It's my feeling always that if you will put yourself to serve, be the change agent. And I call my volunteers change agents, that if we want something changed, we must do something about it. So if you're going to do something, then you have to take a step of faith, a step of boldness out of your comfort zone to sometimes intervene where the children need you. We are the voice of these children. Oftentimes they don't have a voice. We are the ones going to stand for them, speak out for things which affect them. And so once we have offered ourselves, we ensure that the Lord is going to use us, and we need all the boldness, we need all the courage, because this is what it takes to stand out there and say, look, this is what I want to do to have a change in my community, in my church.